Hey yo, if you already watched a video on adding rational expressions, you're going to see the same fractions, except for we're going to be subtracting instead. So when we subtract fractions that have common denominators, boom, we go right into the answer and we write that common denominator. We go right into that answer and we write that common denominator. We go right into that final fraction, write that common denominator, and even if it's an x, we go ahead in that fraction and write that common denominator. Cool. On the top, we just subtract 1 minus 2. Seems super easy so far. 1x minus 2x. Seems super easy so far. 7 minus 2 and 7 minus 2. Now that didn't seem that difficult. That's subtracting fractions. Let's go ahead and take a peek when we are subtracting rational expressions instead. Stay with me here. Don't go too quick. Don't leave the video. There's a couple things you might need to watch out for in these problems. First off, when you get that common denominator, go ahead and set it up. When you get that common denominator, go ahead and set it up. When you get that common denominator, write it down. When you get that common denominator, put it in your final answer. All right, let's go ahead and take a peek at the first problem. We're subtracting. We need to do 7x minus 2x. Seems easy enough. Then just watch. We have a positive 1 minus a 5. So 1 minus 5 is negative 4. So just watch the signs there as we are going to get to our final answer. Underneath it, we've got a 1 minus a 5, which is negative 4. And then we have a positive 4x minus a negative. What happens when we minus a negative? That's going to turn to addition. So 4 plus 2x is going to be 6x. Let's go ahead and think about this problem a different way. I'll go ahead and change colors here for you. We had 1 plus 4x. Then we had minus this whole fraction, this whole group, this whole numerator. Well, remember that subtraction is the same thing as adding the opposite, or adding a negative. So I could change the sign in the middle to adding, change the sign on the 5, change the sign on the 2, change the sign on everything after it in that group. Now take a look. What is 1 plus negative 5? There's that negative 4. What is 4x plus 2x? There's your positive 6x. So there are different ways to do this problem. If you don't like subtraction, or if you think it's going to mess you up, don't even do the subtraction problem. Just go ahead and change it to adding negatives. Let's take a look at the top right. I could change this minus to a plus as long as I change the sign on my 5x and I change the sign on my 11. I can go ahead on the bottom problem, x plus 6, and change it to an adding problem as long as I change the sign to a negative 5 and change the sign to a negative 2. Cool, now you don't even need this video. Now you're just adding rational expressions instead of subtracting. We've got a negative 3 up top. We are now adding with a negative 11, so that's negative 14. I've got a positive x and then minus 5x, so x minus 5x is negative 4x. And in the bottom one, I have an x combining with a negative 2x. And then I have a 6 combining with a negative 5, which is a positive 1. Cool, so we just learned a couple different strategies. If we are subtracting, I'm going to go back to this first problem. What do I want to do? I'm going to go in purple here. Back in this first problem, I can do 7x minus 2x, or I can change the sign to adding negative. Make sure if I have a positive 5 here, then it would change to a negative 5. So I'm combining that negative 5 now with a positive 1, and that's where I'm getting my negative 4 in that answer. If you got questions, come ask me, come help me. I'm here to help, but hopefully that gives you a couple strategies for subtracting rational expressions. If you don't want to subtract them, You can always add and then change everything after it to a negative. Otherwise, just be careful going step by step that when you're combining like terms, you take your x's and you actually minus the x's. You take your numbers, you minus the other numbers. Just watch out. If you're minusing another negative, double negatives, minus a negative, they'll actually turn to adding.